Hello everybody, welcome to a new video of Baldur's Gate 3. In this episode, I'm gonna share my acid damage mage build. It seems acid damage is among the least played damage types in Baldur's Gate 3. It's the same in tabletop D&D. After all, it's not a type that deals tons of damage like fire or lightning, and it has much less spells. But acid damage has a very nice advantage, which is its reliability. Only a very few enemies are resistant or immune to acid damage, which is also the case for force damage, but acid damage can be enhanced by many sources, not like force damage. It is also associated with two nice negative effects. Acid surface reduces AC by 2, making anyone on it easier to hit. Noxious fume makes the target deal acid damage to all of their allies nearby each turn. Besides, it has the only AoE damage cantrip in the game. Being able to use an AoE damage infinitely starting from level 1 is a great advantage. This is even more so on tabletop, and it feels fun when you can make it work. So today's build is designed around this. We are gonna use Acid Splash to deal damage and apply multiple sources to increase its reliability. This build has 6 levels of Black Draconic Sorcerer and 6 levels of Evocation Wizard. At level 6 of Evocation Wizard, we get the ability Potent Cantrip. With this, even when enemies successfully save against our cantrip, they still take half the damage. Normally, they take no damage if they succeed. Once we get this ability, our Acid Splash can never miss. This will give us a stable AoE damage that we can use at will, and all our effects that trigger when successfully dealing damage will always be triggered. We can get this ability when we reach character level 8. On the other hand, at level 6 of Draconic Sorcerer, we get the ability Elemental Affinity. With this, whenever we deal spell damage associated with our Draconic ancestry, we add our Charisma modifier to the damage. And then, throughout the game, you can find many equipment that apply extra damage or trigger effects when we hit with Acid Splash. These are the things you should be sourcing for this build. When we have enough sources like this, we can deal a lot of reliable damage with Acid Splash, especially when fighting enemies that cluster together. Another kind of thing we'll be looking for is the items that grant additional acid damage spells. So, most of the time, what we do with this build will be using acid damage to hit as many targets as possible to keep dealing damage and trigger effects. It's pretty simple, but very efficient. Another damage spell we'll be using is Magic Missile. This spell shoots individual missiles that can never miss. Each of the missiles counts as a single attack, so each of them triggers your extra effects once. This will be the spell we use in boss fights when we need to quickly deal damage to a single target. And then, starting from character level 7, we'll be able to use the spell Haste. It makes you act twice in a turn, increases your moving speed, and increases your AC by 2. This will be the spell we concentrate on in battles. I reserve all the level 3 spell slots for this one. Okay, by now, if you have watched my Evocation Wizard guide video, I think you can see this build is actually a variation of that one. This build deals less single target damage than the pure Evocation Wizard build when burning spell slots for Magic Missile. But it has much better damage output in trivial fights when you don't use your spell slots. So, do you like this build? Do you want to play it now? If you do, how about subscribing to my channel first? It would help a lot for this channel to grow. I'm still trying to get to the 1000 follower threshold. So please subscribe! Okay, now let's talk about the leveling strategy, when to level into each class, and what you can do in different stages of the game. We start this build with the Sorcerer class to be able to cast Acid Splash using our Charisma right from the beginning. When originally allocating ability scores, we give the major bonus to Charisma and bring it up to 17, which is the highest possible for now. We'll eventually get it to 20. This is to maximize our spellcasting ability. It increases the DC of our spells and the extra damage we deal with Elemental Affinity. Then we give the minor bonus to Dexterity and make it 16. This is to increase our initiative rolls and our AC. Then we forego 2 strength to bring Constitution to 13, we'll later make it 14. This is to increase our hit points and thus our survivability. This will also increase our chance to maintain concentration when taking damage. And because we start as a sorcerer, we have a proficiency bonus for Constitution saving throws, which is +2 for now and will eventually become +4 at level 9. So our effective Constitution is actually higher than 14 when making saving throws. We leave Intelligence unchanged at 10. We won't be using it to cast offensive spells. We also leave Wisdom unchanged at 10. This makes us vulnerable to control spells, but we just can't afford to get it. For the Sorcerer cantrips, first we choose Acid Splash, our default attack. Then we choose Friends to make use of our high charisma and be better in conversations. This cantrip gives you an advantage in charisma checks. Then we choose Ray of Frost, another ranged damage option. This is for the rare enemies that are immune to acid damage. Ray of Frost deals cold damage and lowers the target's movement speed. Then we choose Shocking Grasp. This is a melee attack that deals lightning damage. It has an advantage on enemies with metal armor, and if you land the hit, the enemy can no longer use reaction anymore, and you can walk away safely without getting an opportunity attack. For the Sorcerer starting spells, first we choose Shield. It's a must-have for any Sorcerer or Wizard build. It's a reaction that gives you another 5 AC when you need it, making you harder to be hit. Remember to untoggle your opportunity attack in case you waste your reaction on that and can't cast your protection reactions. Then choose Magic Missile, our single target damage source. For the subclass of the Sorcerer, we choose Draconic Bloodline and choose Black Dragon for its Draconic ancestry. Black Dragon is associated with acid damage. It will later increase the acid damage we deal with the spells. This ancestry also gives you the spell Grease. This is a nice control spell in the early game. It covers a medium area with Grease for 10 turns without concentration. This slows everyone on it and possibly makes them fall prone. Prone enemies have disadvantage on their dexterity checks. This makes them more likely to fail against your Acid Splash. Draconic Bloodline also gives you the trait Draconic Resilience. It sets your base AC to 13, which is the equivalent of the spell Mage Armor. Now you can save a spell slot for this. At level 2, we can learn the spell Thunder Wave. This spell can push the enemies away, which is quite useful if multiple enemies somehow get into close range of you. And you can use it to move some heavy objects outside of combat. At this level, we also get 2 Sorcerer points each long rest and can convert them into spell slots and vice versa. We also get 2 Meta Magic, which consumes Sorcerer points to give spells additional effects for once. We choose Twinned Spell. It allows a spell that normally targets only 1 unit to target 2. We can use it on haste later. And then we have 2 characters that can act twice in a turn for 10 turns. From level 3 to level 8, we'll be leveling up in the Wizard class and get Potent Cantrip as soon as possible. For the Wizard cantrips, we are gonna choose 3 utility cantrips. There is no point in choosing anything offensive, because Wizard uses intelligence to cast spells, and we are not gonna land many offensive spells with 10 intelligence. First, we choose Light. This cantrip can make an object shine and illuminate the surroundings. Then we choose Mage Hand to manipulate things from a distance. Then we choose Minor Illusion to distract people. For the Wizard starting spells, first we choose Long Strider, which I think is a must-have for any party. It increases the target's moving distance for the whole day without concentration, as long as the spell is still prepared. And it's a ritual spell, which means if you cast it outside of combat, it doesn't consume your spell slot. Then we choose Enhanced Leap and Feather Fall. These 2 combined can give your party more freedom when exploring the map. Then we choose Disguise Self, which allows you to assume a false identity. This can be useful in places where a certain race has benefits. Then we choose Find Familiar. This allows you to summon a creature into your party to help with combat and exploring. Once summoned, they'll be there until their hit points get reduced to 0. It's a ritual spell too, and summon spells don't need to stay prepared once the creature is summoned. Then we choose Chromatic Orb. It can be used to deal a certain type of damage to trigger some effects. At Wizard level 1, you also get the ability Arcane Recovery. you can recover a combined level of spell slots that is less than or equal to half your wizard level rounded up. At level 4, we choose into the Evocation School and get the ability Sculpt Spells. With this, our AoE evocation spells don't hurt our allies. Now we can cast Thunder Wave even when our allies are in the area. At this level, we can also learn and prepare the spell Force Life. This spell gives you some temporary hit points. This effect lasts a whole day as long as you don't take damage and lose those hit points. So, you only need to cast it at the beginning of the day. At level 5, we can learn and prepare the spell See Invisibility. This is one of the best abilities of a wizard. It lasts a whole day and doesn't need concentration, but you do need to keep it prepared. We also get to learn Knock. This spell can unlock any lock, no matter its difficulty class, unless the story forbids it. At level 6, we can choose our first feat. Here we choose Ability Improvement to bring our Charisma to 18 and our Constitution to 14, giving them both another +1 modifier. We also get to learn and prepare the spell Misty Step. It is used for both inside and outside of combat by teleporting for quite a distance, and it only takes a bonus action. At level 7, we can learn and prepare the spell Haste. Now we can act twice in a turn in an intense battle. And with our Meta Magic Twinned spell, we can make an ally do the same. At level 8, we get the ability Potent Cantrip. Now our Acid Splash can never miss. At this level, we can learn another powerful spell that every mage should learn, Counter Spell. This allows you to completely negate an enemy spell as a reaction. Counter Spell can negate any spell whose level is not higher than the spell slot you spent. If the spell's level is higher, you still get a chance to negate it, but you need to make an ability check. Starting from level 9, we'll be leveling up in the Sorcerer class. At level 9, we can learn the spell Shatter. This is an AoE evocation spell that deals thunder damage, and because we have the ability Sculpt Spell, it doesn't hurt our allies. At level 10, we can choose our second feat. Here we choose Ability Improvement to increase our Charisma to 20 the cap, maximizing our spellcasting ability. At level 11, we can learn the spell Fireball. This is an AoE evocation spell that deals a large amount of fire damage. Again, because we have the ability Sculpt Spells, our Fireball doesn't hurt our allies. At level 12, we get the ability Elemental Affinity. Now, every time we deal acid damage with a spell or cantrip, we add our Charisma modifier to the damage. At this level, we can also learn the spell Lightning Bolt. This is an AoE evocation spell that deals lightning damage. It benefits from Sculpt Spells too. Okay, we have talked about how good this build is, now let's talk about its weaknesses. The first weakness of any acid damage build is that no enemy is vulnerable to acid damage. This is another reason why your damage capacity can never compare with a fire damage build or lightning damage build. But we didn't choose acid damage for high damage, right? We choose it for low cost reliable damage. And then, Acid Splash is a conjuration cantrip. It doesn't benefit from your Sculpt Spells ability, so if your front line is surrounded by enemies, you can't use Acid Splash to attack all those enemies without hurting your ally. In these situations, you can use Shatter, but that will cost your spell slots. Then, finally, though the highest level of your spell slots is level 6, you can only learn up to level 3 spells. This means you can't learn most of the strong damage spells. It also means you can't summon any creature other than the level 1 familiars. This last one is a pretty great weakness for a pure mage build. And that is everything about this acid damage mage build. Hope you like it. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel, because I'm still trying to get to the 1000 follower threshold. I would appreciate more if you can share this video and make more people follow. But anyways, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.